Hello guys, welcome to another episode of Storylines Explained. To this episode, we'll be looking at the story of Condemned: Criminal Origins. Well, without waiting, let's get into the video. Condemned: Criminal Origins is a first-person survival horror video game developed by Monolith Productions and published by Sega. It was released worldwide in 2005 on the Xbox 360, with a Microsoft Windows version released in 2006, with the developer citing films such as The Silence of the Lambs, Seven and Saw as inspiration. The game places an emphasis on melee combat and puzzle solving, including searching for fingerprints and gathering evidence. Upon release, Condemned was met with generally positive reviews by players and critics. Many reviewers cited its storyline and lack of progression as the game's biggest faults, while its solid controls, gameplay and fresh approach to horror were praised. A sequel, Condemned 2: Bloodshot, was released in 2008 for the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3. There was also an internet prequel and a planned film adaptation to expand the Condemned franchise. What twists the mind of an ordinary human into a serial killer? Assigned to the Serial Crimes Unit, Agent Ethan Thomas must answer this question and bring the worst of society to justice. His solve rate is the best in the Bureau, perhaps too good. While investigating the growing list of serial killers, Agent Thomas concludes that something is twisting the bodies and souls of those that society has left behind. The homeless, addicted and deranged are rising from the city's underbelly and committing mindless acts of violence. Could there be an unseen connection between the increasing brutality of the latest serial killings and the increasing crime rate? This question is pushed to the forefront after Agent Thomas is framed for the murder of 2 police officers. Now he must solve the murders to stop the killings and exonerate himself from the crimes of which he is accused. As FBI agent Ethan Thomas, you rely on sharp instincts and sophisticated forensic tools to investigate crime scenes, collect evidence, and find clues that will lead you to the killers. With danger lurking in every shadow, you need whatever weapons you can find to stay alive. If you run out of bullets, you'll have to fight with a fire axe, shovel, pipe, 2x4, or whatever you can pry from the environment around you. You'll need to make sure nothing stops you as you try to uncover exactly who or what is behind the grisly killings plaguing the city. The game begins with the protagonist, SCU agent Ethan Thomas, arriving at the scene of a murder. He and his fellow officers go into an abandoned building that is surrounded by psychopaths and criminals. The crime scene they investigate is one of a young woman. She is on the floor with strangulation wounds, sitting across a table from a male mannequin. Ethan, along with his colleagues, agree that the murder was most likely committed by the Matchmaker, a serial killer that Ethan has been investigating. After they collect evidence from the scene, one of the officers smells cigarette smoke. Believing that the smoke must be coming from their suspect, they decide to split up and go after him. While searching for the suspect, Ethan tries to restore power from an electrical box. Due to an electrical surge, Ethan is shocked and drops to the floor, causing his weapon to be thrown from his hand. A man hiding in the shadows takes it and flees. Ethan manages to chase the man into a small, dead-end room, where the man holds Ethan at gunpoint and tells him they have similar goals. Ethan's colleagues enter the room and tell the man to drop his weapon and are promptly shot by the man with Ethan's gun, who then shoves Ethan out a window onto the street. Ethan wakes in his apartment with Malcolm Van Horn, a friend of Ethan's father, at his side. Malcolm warns Ethan that he is wanted for the deaths of the 2 officers who were shot with Ethan's gun. Ethan is determined to prove his innocence, although his own sanity appears to be slipping, as throughout the game he suffers numerous horrific visions, and all the while is forced to fight to the death in self-defense against homeless men and women who have inexplicably been driven insane. He soon learns that the killer is interested in Ethan's SCU career. Later, he finds the body of the Matchmaker, killed by his own modus operandi in an old department store. He presumes that the man at the original crime scene, referred to in the game as Serial Killer X, is the culprit and that he is trying to kill the serial killers that Ethan is looking for. Ethan searches for the one that he thinks is next, a serial killer dubbed the Torturer. Ethan tracks the torturer and serial killer X to an abandoned apple orchard in the rural town of Briar. Shortly before finding the torturer in the farmhouse, Ethan is attacked by a strange man-like creature. Ethan kills the creature and continues in his search. He searches through the farm where he eventually finds the torturer dead, also killed by his own modus operandi. Soon, Ethan finds the mysterious killer, who is revealed to be Leland Van Horn, nephew of Malcolm Van Horn. Malcolm arrives and knocks Ethan out with a shovel to prevent him from hurting Leland. Leland then knocks Malcolm out. When Ethan awakens, he is tied up and at the mercy of Leland. He explains to Ethan that he has been killing the serial killers that Ethan had been hunting, and that he intends to kill Ethan as well. As Leland thinks of all the ways that he can kill Ethan, cutting Ethan's finger off in the process, Ethan notices another man-like creature hiding in the rafters. This creature is known as the Hate and is identified as the source of the madness gripping Metro City. Malcolm attacks Leland from behind and succeeds in wrestling him to the ground. Ethan manages to free himself and Malcolm tells him to kill the Hate, saying that it is the cause of Leland's madness. Ethan pursues the Hate as it tries to escape, fighting waves of hideously burned homeless men along the way, and eventually corners it in a barn and kills it. As Malcolm drives Ethan home, Ethan discovers that Leland is alive and in the trunk of the car. Malcolm still believes that Leland can be saved from the Hate's influence, but Ethan does not and is furious at the revelation. When Ethan opens the trunk, he is given the option to shoot the tied-up Leland. If he does not shoot Leland, Leland pulls out his own gun and waves it at Ethan before committing suicide. Some time later, Ethan and Rosa are having a conversation in a diner when Rosa tips him off that she is wired and the FBI is investigating Ethan, while revealing that she still trusts him. Rosa then leaves the diner and Ethan goes to the bathroom. While in the restroom, Ethan apparently experiences another vision while watching his reflection in the mirror, and his mouth becomes deformed and wide open just like the Hate's mouth, before the game comes to an abrupt halt. And that's it. I hope that it gave you a good information about Condemned: Criminal Origins, but if you enjoyed this video then
When Barbara switched to TurboTax?
There are iconic duos in the world: Bonnie and Clyde, Facebook and privacy concerns, Google and antitrust lawsuits. But for me, the most exciting one is clearly Sega and horror games. Because the first thing should come to people's mind when they think of Sega is Condemned: Criminal Origins, and not this abomination. In Condemned, we play as a street crime unit investigator, Ethan Thomas. He's arriving to a murder scene just to get jump scared by his colleague.
Thomas, I don't got all day here. Let's get a move on.
It's gonna be a long-ass shift waiting for us. The suspect we are looking for is presumably the matchmaker, a serial killer known for murdering young women and then posing them with male mannequins. As we get to the scene, we have to investigate and look for evidence in the area. The samples will be sent to Rose, the lab technician. She will analyze them and contact us as she receives the results. A close look at the clues reveals that the matchmaker is behind the murder, who is mysteriously missing his index finger. Now I have an idea why his girlfriend dumped him. Before finishing the investigation, our colleagues are distracted by cigarette smoke, and we head in the direction of the smell. The lights get turned off, then we hear some noises upstairs, so we split up to turn on the lights and catch the potential suspect. It wouldn't be so hard if my frames were not dropping like there was no tomorrow. Now that's better. Oh, and some additional info. The city is infested with aggressive drug addicts, who will be our main opponents during the game. They just don't give a fuck and attack us with anything they can get their hands on. It can be a board, a pipe,
Men. Probably don't.
Since his he resigned from
Unlikely. Okay. Get to
Condemned 2 is a game I remember incredibly fondly and I could get my hands on. It also acted as a nice form of window shopping as a kid, but the things that always stuck in my mind were the game had released. It was once again developed by Monolith Productions and published by Sega. The game was officially announced in July of 2007 and was shown off at E3 that same year. A month after announcement, Violent Games had come under fire from the ESRB. Manhunt 2 had been given an adult-only rating due to its graphic nature. Because of this, Monolith Productions got in contact with the ESRB and had to cut some scenes to avoid the same fate. They specifically had to tone down some of the more gory and violent environmental kills. On the performance side of things, Greg Grunberg, who voiced Ethan Thomas in the first game, chose not to reprise his role for the second entry. This was mostly due to the change in the character and the studio wanting a darker and edgier voice for Ethan. On that same note, Ethan Thomas was drastically changed for the Condemned sequel. He was made into a much darker, broodier, and troubled guy than we saw in the first game. Frank Rook, the lead designer and writer on the game, felt that the change was necessary. He thought it was a natural evolution between the first and the second entries. In the first game, Ethan was just discovering the dark world around him. In Condemned 2, he was a bit broken as a result. The whole team didn't agree with this change, though. Some of the staff felt like Ethan was changed a little too much for their liking. The story for the game was constructed in an almost backwards manner. The game environments were designed first, and then the team figured out a way to weave them together. This led to more disagreements among the team, causing some to feel that the story and environments didn't have any cohesion. Jonathan Stein, the lead level designer, stated, "Level theming was more centered around what environments would be new than concern over a cohesive whole. Some, myself included, were concerned that the environment, the story, and the enemies felt schizophrenic, or at least not cohesive." The team did ensure that the environments were detailed though, visiting many real-world locations like the Sunny Jim Peanut Butter Factory in Georgetown, Seattle, the Satsop Nuclear Power Plant in Washington, and the Timberline Lodge in Oregon. The team took influences from movies like Dark City and The Cell, as well as the Silent Hill games and the album Oceanic by ISIS. This album fucking slaps, by the way. Frank Rook would state that the philosophy of the game in general was to add depth and variety to all facets of the game, and that the starting point of the sequel was finding everything the first game could have done better and doing it right this time. It seems like the team really wanted to improve this time around. They wanted to take in player feedback and make the necessary changes to make something that worked better and was more fun to play. Despite all of the troubles and worries with development, Condemned 2 Bloodshot was released on March 11th, 2008 for the Xbox 360 and March 18th, 2008 for the PlayStation 3. A quick note before we get into things. I just first want to note the version of the game that I played for this review. If you know anything about Condemned 2, then you'll know that the game is actually stuck in a forever hell on the Xbox 360 and the PS3. Jace Hall, the founder of Monolith Productions, is actually the sole owner of the IP at this point. For whatever reason, nothing has really been done with it though, and this game was never ported to PC. Naturally, this leads one down the road of emulation, but emulating this game on both RPCS3, the main PS3 emulator, and Xenia, the main Xbox 360 emulator, bears poor results. They both have tons of bugs, and as I'm sure there are ways around this, I just decided to buy a cheap copy on eBay and break out the old trusty PS3. The PS3 version of the game did have some frame rate issues at certain points, so it definitely wasn't perfect. When transitioning between areas or doing some complex animations, the game would often slow down considerably. I can't be sure how well the Xbox 360 version of the game plays because I didn't want to buy it just for a one-off line in this review. The game was still playable though, and ran fine other than the small handful of issues. Our game actually begins with the mission Rock Bottom, a two-word explanation for where our main character, Ethan Thomas, has ended up. Before we join him, though, a group is reviewing an audio recording of someone being killed, and before they died, they mentioned Ethan by name. The group is the SCU, the Serial Crimes Unit from the first game. Director Ike Farrell is here, as well as Rosa, who assisted Ethan in his investigations throughout Condemned. She has quite a bit of a makeover at this point, though, to the point where you'd be forgiven if you didn't realize it was her. Agent Dorland is here as well, someone we'll become very familiar with over the course of the game. The recording was from a call that Rosa received this morning. Farrell wants to find Ethan, but after his suspension, he resigned from the agency and has been laying low. We then see Mr. Thomas, who's had quite the makeover since we last saw him. Ethan has let his hair and beard grow out, he looks disheveled, tired, and angry. He even has wraps around his hands, ready to fight at a moment's notice. At this point, Van Horn calls the bar and wants to talk to Ethan, but he denies the call. Ethan then begins hallucinating. His glass overflows with sludge, and a strange vampiric-looking creature bumps into him, which Ethan responds to by beating his face in. The bartender kicks him out, and he's left on the stairs. So before we get too deep into things here, I just want to talk about the surface-level, edgy changes that Condemned 2 has made.
Drunk, tired, and pissed off. Why? Because this damn city's too fucking blind to see what's killing them.
Clearly, the first game wasn't like this. It was a simple crime thriller about a detective searching for a meta serial killer, one that hunted down other killers. The game does veer into the paranormal a bit at the end, but it's a grounded tale for the most part. Now, Ethan is monologuing to himself in a brooding way. He's pissed off, he's beating people in bars. The soundtrack has even changed to a pseudo-nu metal style at certain points. It's very much a game of its time. This era, 2008, was full of this stuff. Every Western game tried to take their own spin on it, to be hip, to be cool with the kids, but that honestly doesn't feel like what Condemned is doing here. Condemned 2's expression of this badass aesthetic and the cool angry guys beating down their demons doesn't feel like a cash-in to try and capitalize on a trend. It feels like an aesthetic choice that the designers wanted to make, and honestly, it just kind of works. In any other sort of setting, this change would be like putting butter on strawberries. It just wouldn't go together. But here, it feels like it fits, especially with the new information that we'll get from the world and the turn that the story begins to take in the second half. The game just feels right. It does take some time to sink in though. You have to be along for the ride, and right from the beginning, I didn't really want to get in the passenger seat. But throughout the course of my playthrough, I got more accustomed to it, until I realized that I was just being a spoil sport and this whole thing was damned fun. Condemned 2 puts cool over almost everything else, and these little moments appear in each level, and it basically functions as a fuck off button. A lot of the time it
Alright, I'm trying to get like the story of this game. I have my mic muted because it keeps catching the audio of the videos, so I was just gonna get tired of that. I've been dealing with that for like 2 hours now. I'm just very annoyed right now, but trying to find like the audio of this or the story of this game. So if someone could like wrap it up better, then so I could see like how it went. I don't know, or just get a better understanding of the game. I guess I don't know. Yeah. Just mute it again. Just showing y'all what it would be like if I had to unmute it.
I don't have much time. Ethan trusted you.
I don't think it's loud enough right now. It can kind of hold itself together. Not able to find like a story of the game of Condemned 2 though.
Called the Retro Vault, where we'll be looking at and diving into stories from games of old. PS1, PS2, X, Alan Wake, Alone in the Dark, developed in this era of video games.
This is a little bit ridiculous.
I guess that's it. I don't know.